It's the most high-profile case the city of Tulsa has had in a long time. The Good Friday shootings rocked the community. But in less than 2 days, Tulsa police had 2 suspects in custody. And tonight's To The Point, 2 News anchor Russ McCaskey talks with Tulsa Police Chief Chuck Jordan about how the investigation unfolded.
Police Chief Chuck Jordan joins us. Thanks for being with us today.
You bet, Russ.
Let's talk about this case from the Good Friday shootings, as they're being called. Your response, the police department's response, I think a lot of people are impressed how quickly this thing came together. But let's start at the beginning. I woke up Good Friday morning. I saw one of your officers from the north side, I believe it was Dan Miller, talking about the string of shootings. And at that time, you guys didn't have a whole lot to go on.
No, we really didn't. It was... we had nothing at that point.
Yeah. So where do you start on these? Because most cases with shootings and murders and so forth, there's some kind of connection, drug deal, or maybe it's domestic in nature. When it's completely random, that's got to be pretty difficult.
It is difficult. And, my biggest concern that night after we found that there were 3 and probably shot by the same random shooter was that this was a drifter or something, and the guy's on I-40 en route to Albuquerque. Right. That would have been very difficult for us. So, yeah, this could have been a lot different outcome if it hadn't been for the digging and with the community support. They gave us a lot.
So you guys had, was it a little group that you put together? I think it was kind of called Operation Random Shooter at some point?
Well, initially it was responded to by my fugitive warrant sections, which is part of the Marshal's Violent Crime Task Force. And they were on at hour 1. They're a standing unit that are always there. This was a really great operation, but I think people need to know that we throw a lot of resources, and they've had success time after time. The Hicks Park homicides, the homicides up on East Virgin, they're out there doing this almost weekly. Yeah,
so. And obviously they do it pretty well because things started to turn around. You said you got some help from the public, Crime Stopper calls, those kinds of things, really gave the investigation some focus.
It absolutely did.
Yeah, and so when did that start? Was that late Friday? Did some of that start to come together?
Actually, that really didn't start coming together well until Saturday, when we had the press conference about putting the task force together, and then we started getting a lot of hits, and they were good information. Some of them relating to the same suspects we arrested, some of them to other suspects that it would have been very logical to think that they could have been possible. We'd have looked, we'd have vetted them and found out they weren't, but.
So within almost 48 hours, this thing gets some resolution. That's got to be really comforting, I think, for people who live on the north side where the shootings had happened, but really for the whole community to realize that you guys are out there and able to solve pretty difficult cases in a pretty short amount of time.
Well, yes, and I can't say enough about the Tulsa Police Department. I mean, these guys were passionate about this. They were offended by this. They had this isn't going to happen in my town mentality, and that's exactly what I wanted to see.
Yeah. Let's talk about some other things that you've been doing since you've been the police chief, putting neighborhood patrolmen in the neighborhoods and so forth. Is some of that starting to pay off as well?
Well, I think absolutely it is. We're getting a lot more information. People in the neighborhoods are starting to know who their officers are. They're seeing them at neighborhood meetings. They're seeing them driving through their neighborhoods. I think there's a lot of accountability issues. An officer knows this is my beat, and he or she jealously guard that beat, and that's exactly what we want.
Yeah. And I guess when it comes to cases like this, and almost every town deals with this, where there's certain crimes where they're concerned that the public won't come forward and give information, they fear retaliation or those kinds of things. But I think the lesson maybe from this whole deal is that if people do come forward with information, you guys can catch the bad guys and it can make the street safer.
Absolutely, and I'll be quite honest with you, we're going to exploit this. I mean, we've enhanced our trust, I think, to a certain extent with the African-American community, and we're going to do everything possible to show them even more that we can be trusted, that we're working for them as well as Southside.
Yeah, and obviously we're getting a lot of publicity about this nationwide. People are looking at this, and one thing that they're not saying is the police department didn't do their job. They're saying the police department did do their job. Yeah, and that's probably a good thing.
That's a very good thing.
All right, Chief, thanks for joining us today.
Russ, thanks for having me.